Hi, everyone. Today we welcome Melissa Minkow. Welcome, Melissa Minkow. Welcome to What Just Happened.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. I work for a company called CI&T. We have been around over 30 years. We are digital technology specialists. We do a lot of the highly technical engineering projects that retailers, financial services, health and life sciences, manufacturing brands need so that they can provide best-in-class customer and consumer experiences virtually and omnichannel as well. My role is the Global Director of Retail Strategy. I leverage my lengthy background in retail and retail strategy to talk to our clients and talk to the industry in terms of what's important, what should be prioritized from a digital perspective.
Your role there is to have your finger on the pulse of what's happening at the consumer level, which some would say is the bottoms up, but really it's the top down if we put the consumer at the top of everything.
So my goal is always to advocate on behalf of the customer or the end consumer, but to bring that knowledge and that research to our clients and the industry on behalf of CI&T so that we have a really firm perspective on what needs to happen on the front end so that we can create the best technology to support that.
Are you guys the service provider or are you the orchestrator and connector to other service providers?
We're the service provider. We do build completely custom software solutions, but we have a ton of partners to do that. So we're systems integration as well as custom software development by leveraging the partnerships that we have with Google and Microsoft and Amazon and Adyen and Crown Peak and many others.
So give us what that looks like at the intersection of cultural insight, tech innovation, and some of the consumer behavior that you're seeing.
I cover anything related to retail, which in my personal opinion is everything. I'm looking at the gambling space, I'm looking at art, I'm looking at travel, because I think best retailers learn from best practice in every single category and also every market. So whenever I'm traveling, even if I'm technically on vacation, I'm still looking at all the retail experiences and the technology that supports that, because working for CI&T has married up my retail industry knowledge with an understanding of what's required on the technical kind of back end side. I am deploying my own proprietary research on behalf of CI&T. So I write all of our quantitative and qualitative surveys that we use to get a good feel on what consumers want out of their shopping experiences. So our flagship piece is our annual Connected Retail Report. We've been doing that 5 years, and it's across 1,000 US consumers, representative of the US population. We ask them a bunch of questions. We've asked them about the metaverse in the past. We've asked them about AI and generative AI, and do they want retailers to include it in their models and their path to purchase? We've asked about social commerce. We've asked about the economy and tariffs. I just think it's so important for retailers and brands to build experiences that resonate with how consumers actually want to shop and what they're doing already, rather than trying to create behavioral change. So I try to understand exactly where consumers are at in our research when we do that.
I think that's super interesting to extend past just the store or shopping or purchasing of goods and look at consumer interaction, any type of discretionary spend.
Yes.
Certainly concerts, I'm sure you're seeing a lot of infiltration of discretionary play spend being eaten up by concerts. Can you talk about that a little bit?
In our latest Connected Retail survey, we asked if consumers anticipated the prices of necessities going up, and we characterized that as food, electricity, rent, that kind of stuff. And then we also asked about spending on discretionary purchases, if they thought prices would go up and or if they thought their spending would go up. So what was interesting was they told us they definitely expected prices to go up on necessities, and they therefore expected to spend more on necessities. That they expected prices to go up on discretionary goods, but they didn't expect their spending to go up on discretionary goods. So they were indicating to us that they were going to balance out their spending behaviors because they could only control what they could control, which is some of those discretionary behaviors. So maybe they considered that concerts or movies, some travel experiences, and that they would try to balance out the spending they were unavoidably going to be seeing increase on their necessities by pulling back a little bit on their discretionary. But I mean, we still very much are seeing consumers prioritize experiences if they're looking at discretionary choices. I think we're all a little bit worried about just the future in general and trying to figure out what's the best use of the money that we allot to our discretionary. And I think a lot of consumers have decided experiences are a better use of that than possessions.
Much of what a brand is where and how you get it, not even how it looks.
100%. I think the department store story in particular is so fascinating because, especially with respect to a brand like Macy's, for example, I remember seeing the very obvious points of decline when I was working for Target in Minneapolis, and we shared a mall with Macy's. And it was over the course of a year, all of a sudden their sales associates were gone. And to me, a huge part of the value in a department store model is the expertise that comes with the sales associates. That is really the goal, is you're having store in store across a massive space, and the sales associates are meant to represent each of those mini stores in a really expert way. And the second they started taking away all the sales associates and you couldn't find anyone to help you and you couldn't find anyone support your decision-making process and provide information for you, because this wasn't really the omni-channel era just yet. So you weren't using your phone to help you make decisions. You weren't doing your online research just yet. They lost all their value. And it wasn't just a Macy's problem, right? It was totally a department store problem of it was too expensive to keep that much help. But this is a prime example of, I think, the biggest downfall for so many retailers is cutting the wrong corners to save money. Like, you're revoking your sales floor presence was not the way to save money. That was the expertise that people really went there for. And to your point, then it provided this great opportunity for D2C brands because they could be an expert in their own field for their own brand. And you would go to, and that was exactly when Warby Parker was really in its heyday and it just popped up on the scene. And people loved it because it was centered around expertise and providing really tailored decision support and brand knowledge. And department stores started pulling that back right when D2C brands could pop up and show that in dividends. So that's my first thing. I will also say, I think it's interesting that you say it's really about like where you can get product more than the product itself a lot of times, because I am definitely a champion for product being really resonant with consumers. I think some brands have done a really poor job with distribution and footprint, but they still have such a winning product that they can overcome even bad marketing and all that. I think no matter what, the product itself has to be different, has to be quality, or if it's not, then it has to be so low price. That's the differentiator. But I do agree with you also that there's so much value in location and what you were saying of where and how people can get you to 100%. So
I think an example of pop-up bagels is it's a bagel and it's
Yeah.
fine. And we have a lot of really good bagel stores in New York City, shops, but they managed to get, and same with Blank Coffee, right?
Blank Street, so this is funny that you're picking these two because I actually do think Pop-Up Bagels has a superior bagel. And I also love the Blank Street product. I think they are such an innovative brand, both from a branding perspective, but also from a product perspective. Their level of consistency with their drinks is unmatched, and they keep their menu pretty narrow, but it's always the flavors that are trendy. And so the consistency piece is so important in that space. And I think that's actually why Starbucks has been suffering, because they were known so long for their consistency that they could deliver on, and they lost sight of that. And now you go to a Starbucks and you're not really sure what you're going to get despite the same order you've had for how many years. So yeah, it's funny that you picked those two examples. Those are two brands I happen to love and think are differentiated, but I do also simultaneously agree with what you're saying. So it's funny.
Very interesting. Yes, of course. It is, of course, a blend of product and location. I heard that it's unusual for consumers to compare prices to as long ago as 2019 pre-COVID, but that's what they're doing. I don't know what the normal time frame is, like year over year. I don't know that the consciousness is like aware of year over year. It's usually some outside marker like pre-COVID, pre-election, change in something going on. What do you know about that? And are retailers and brands taking that into consideration? Do they know that out there people are still comparing them to 5 years ago, 6 years ago in terms of pricing?
Yeah, I hope retailers know that. I think they are figuring out that their sales data is going to be, I hate this word, but unprecedented. It's going to look a lot different. We saw in the last couple of months consumers really stocking up on certain products in anticipation of tariffs going into effect, which is a very similar behavior to what we saw during COVID. And a lot of the impacts of these tariffs are going to be similar to what we saw during COVID when it came to supply chain shortages. We're seeing shipping containers half filled because retailers can't really afford to bring as much product over.
And so what happens next?
This is the time to become resilient. This is the time to be strategic and be smart and certainly seek out cost reductions. But this, going back to our conversation about Macy's and other department stores, smart cost reductions. Don't ruin your business model and your differentiators at the cost of cost reductions. Find cost reductions through leveraging things like AI and service providers who can help you figure this stuff out. If you use this time to get really smart and build up your technology stack in the correct way and find where those cost reductions make the most sense, you're future-proofing your business and moving yourself forward. So,
how do you feel about the state of the tech stack right now? I know that if you're a direct-to-consumer 2010s brand, you probably have literally everything and a lot of overlap. What are you seeing, and what do you see in terms of the state of where it is now? And how do you see people, or how are you guys recommending unwinding that or redoing?
we do see a lot of technical debt. We see a lot of retailers figuring out what they can get rid of, what they should be adding on from a composable standpoint, how to build their architecture to be as flexible as possible and supportive of the future as possible, and also so that they're not facing any breakdowns that they can only fix by tearing everything apart. So that's what we're seeing, is a lot of variety. We're seeing a definite reevaluation of the tech stack, and therefore it's a very interesting time for us, because that's what we do, is evaluate that and help retailers make the smartest decisions from that perspective. But the retailers who are saying, okay, now is not the time for change, then we don't want to rock the boat in any other ways, it's already being rocked, I just don't think that's wise, because things are only going to get more challenging before they get easier. And why not try to build up that resilience now and be strategic now, when it's not a race to be the most innovative, but it's a race to be the most strategic? Like, really invest there.
We said we were going to try to do some hot take questions. I feel like I've been throwing all these different questions at you anyway, stuff we
love it.
didn't even talk about beforehand. So I appreciate that. Is there any way anyone can predict where the consumer might be in 5 years? Is that even possible?
That's a great question. I don't think so, because I think what we can only do is predict where the consumer will be for the next 3.5 years, because I really do think the political environment is the economic environment, and what we can expect from the economy is some challenges, which means that consumers are going to be challenged and they're going to be figuring out how they want to spend. And the retailers they really resonate with, and it goes back to those kind of quality products or the brands that they appreciate, they will be okay.
I work with a lot of independent brands, independent retailers, a whole different story, a lot of wait and see, a lot more price increases have already happened because they're getting hit with these giant invoices that they just simply can't sustain. They have to pass it along.
Exactly.
I think you have such interesting perspective on so many different things. And I love to hear that you're also in gaming and hospitality and all of those aspects of the consumer's life, and how the thing is, one of those things I'm sure you would have something to say about this, is great experiences in other industries become the expectation
Yes.
inside a shopping experience, online or in person. Let's end this with your thoughts on that.
Yes, the easiest, most convenient customer experience you can create is what the consumer increasingly comes to expect. We saw it with Amazon 2-day shipping. It took a while, but now consumers expect that level of delivery for other brands. So I'm looking at dating apps. I think dating apps are a really fun example of offering certain benefits that then consumers would want to translate to retail. I am just such a firm believer in looking at all different industries and all different markets constantly to learn and observe and borrow, because consumers' behaviors are not happening in a vacuum. So that's why it's so important to be thinking about that.
That's awesome. I've enjoyed this very much. I really appreciate your time.
Likewise. No, thank you so much for having me on. I could talk to you for this episode could be 10 hours, to be honest.
I'm Christine Russo, and that's what just happened.